Welcome to another episode of the draft season. I am John Schmelk. Thank you so much for being with us. So, I recorded an episode with Tony Pauline and Dave Syvertsen from OurLads.com. We went around an hour and 15 minutes. So that's too long for one episode, to be quite frank with you. So we've decided to split it into two parts. The first part is what you're going to hear today. It's talking about the great weekend of college football that happened on September 28th and a couple days before that. And then the second half of the show, we talked about ranking the best position groups in the draft. We went another 40 minutes or so on that. So that's going to air in a week or two, depending on when we want to air it. So that's the two episodes. We're going to lead off again. Draft season is brought to you by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Giants. We're going to talk about this week's games. There's so many good ones. Again, we go like 30, 40 minutes. That'll be this week's episode. And then you stay tuned either next week when the Giants play the Eagles or the week after that. We'll air the other episode talking about and ranking the top position groups in this year's draft. So here's part one of our conversation. Tony Pauline and Dave Syvertsen. Welcome to another edition of Draft Season, presented by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk. Tony Pauline, as always, from Sportskeeda with us, and we welcome in a guest this week, second straight week, Dave Syvertsen. He covers the draft and does the Our Lads Draft Guide. Dave, welcome. How are you, man?
Great, guys. Really pumped to see you guys do some of the best work out there with the draft coverage. And I'm so glad to see you guys starting out this early because it really is. It's a 12-month process. It does not sleep. A lot of people play catch up in January, and it's kudos to you guys for putting that out there now for these people to watch.
Yeah, for first year, Tony, I think we started in like November, right? Something like that. And then we decided, you know what, there's enough content every week to kind of track it. You do one show and it really, because the draft analysis process is really like a journey, right, Tony, where you see where the guy is, where he starts, and how the season goes. And I think it's good to track it, and it gives you a much better feel for these guys when you get to, the All-Star games in January.
The only thing I disagree with is you use the word season. I use seasons because I usually have 2 to 3 years of notes on the guys to track them throughout their college career. One of those players we're going to talk about. But, I got to pass on a funny story. Our Lads was actually the first draft publication that I bought in my life in the mid to late 80s when the Hepplers used to run the guide. I absolutely enjoyed it. And to this day, I still use the Our Lads depth charts. When I'm watching film, I have my tablet. I don't have an iPad, I use a Samsung. I got my tablet in front of me with the depth chart for Buffalo or Cincinnati or, whoever. And, the guys I'm watching, I'm underlined. The guys I want to maybe keep an eye on, they got X's next to them. The guys who are not in my database get checked. So it's been an ongoing process, and Our Lads has been a large part of it as far as my journey is concerned.
How do you track all those depth charts, Cy? I mean, to me, I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into that, especially for some of these smaller programs that, as someone that called FCS games on TV for a while, I know sometimes the media sites and the notes don't exactly give you the most accurate depth charts. So
No,
how do you guys get those things straight, man? It's really impressive.
Well, as Tony said, they're 45 years old now, and it takes a team. And we have some really smart techie guys in the background helping us out, scrape some data. But it really does. I'll tell you what, it comes down to fans sometimes reaching out to us, saying like, hey, this guy is actually the second string left tackle, and this guy is the third string right guard. I mean, we get it right, I would say 95% of the time. But we actually have really crowdsourced a lot of the information. We cross-check everything we do, and we have a great team of guys that we know our roles, and it's 24/7, 365. But it's if there were 25 hours in a day, we would put 25 hours into it this time of year.
All right, fans will let you know. That's for sure, because I know with the late transfer portal, I missed out a couple of guys. Like, hey, he's not at Maryland anymore. He's now at Auburn. So, yeah, they'll let you know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they will.
Absolutely right. All right, guys, just an unbelievable weekend of college football. Week 1 was great this year, but this one probably topped it. A lot of great games. We're going to get to a lot of them. And then our second half of the episode today, folks, will be ranking the quality of the position group. So and we'll mention some players in the groups, obviously, but what position group's the best, and then go down from best to maybe the one that we think has some players that still has to prove themselves in it. So that's what we're going to do on today's episode. But let's start it off, guys, with Ohio State and Washington, Tony. This was a game we talked about with Dane Brugler last week. Ohio State really handles Washington 24-6. And I know you have one offensive player on your list you want to get to, but to me, this was really about the Ohio State defense and especially their defensive front. You had a bunch of sacks. Caden Curry, Caden McDonald, Kenyatta Jackson, they all played well. Who'd you like in this game for Ohio State?
And it didn't start off like that because if you watch the game, the Washington offensive line actually moved the ball for the first quarter and a half. They just couldn't convert. But I mean, you watch C.J. Donaldson, the transfer from West Virginia, who came into the season with late round grades. I mean, that guy's a hammer. He's not Quinshawn Junkins, but if you're looking for a late round short yardage ball carrier that can pick it up on 3rd and 2 or in goal line situations, also showed himself to be a decent receiver out of the backfield. I think he's established or is establishing himself well at Ohio State. And then you mentioned those 3 defensive linemen. I think we're seeing the coming of age of those guys, especially the 2 underclassmen, Kenyatta Jackson and Caden McDonald. These are guys who really didn't get a lot of playing time last year because that Ohio State defensive line was so talented, and they're now all on NFL rosters. These guys are getting their playing time, and you're seeing them elevate their game. Caden Curry, he's the Jack Sawyer type, if you will, had a great game against Washington. These guys are going to be fun to track. Kenyatta Jackson, I think a lot of people knew about coming into the season. We talked about him in August. But these other guys, as they're getting more and more playing time after being substitutes and rotational guys last year, are really starting to seek their own level and gain the notice of scouts.
Cy, what jumped out to you in this game? You can kind of double up on Tony's guys if anyone else you want to touch on as well.
Yeah, well, I like how Tony, he noted the receiving skill set, natural pass catching of C.J. Donaldson, 6'2", 232. He was a high school tight end. He didn't make the transition full-time running back until he was at West Virginia, and he was the number 2 guy there a couple years in a row, did not fumble 2023 to 2024 until the very last game, the bowl game last year. Put it on the ground twice. Big power guy. He doesn't do a lot after contact for a guy with this build and lack of agility. So I wonder if he could be anything more than a late day 3 pick, but he's a guy that you feel, I think there's an intriguing upside to him because of that tight end background that has translated to his tape so far in college. And I mean, he hit the nail on the head with the defensive line. Kenyatta Jackson, to me, 6'5", 265, defensive line coaches, you call it right now, when those guys get involved in the scouting process after the season, they're going to start drooling over him. He's got tools for days. He's long, he's strong, he's thick, he can bend, just has not really developed a wide arsenal of pass rush moves, but at the very least, he can play with that high floor because of the power. But the guy I am intrigued with the most, it is Caden McDonald. 6'3", 326. Larry Johnson, best defensive line coach in college football right now. He's recently put in Tyreek Williams, Ty Hamilton, Davon Hamilton, Mike Hall into the NFL. This guy will be next. I don't know if he'll come out this year, but if the Washington game is an indicator that you see a 6'3", 326 guy that can penetrate and change direction in a defensive tackle class right now that is a little uneven. Even the top guys have not played well this year. He could probably bring something to the table and then say, hey, I might be the top D tackle in the nation right now.
All right, I want to show some love for one player on Washington, and this is someone, Tony, that we talked about last week heading into the game. Jonah Coleman did a nice job in this game, man. 13 carries, 70 yards. Obviously, this game was tighter than maybe the final score might have indicated. It was just 14-6 through 3 quarters. Washington was able to stick with the run game. And I thought Jonah Coleman, and you just mentioned how good this Ohio State defensive front looked, Tony. 13 carries, 70 yards. That's pretty good.
But if you look early in that game, I thought the Washington offensive line actually played well. That one, what was it, 34-yard run he had? There was some beautiful blocking up front. The lane was clear. Yeah, Coleman played well. It's just that I think eventually the Ohio State defensive line just overwhelmed the Washington offensive line, who was playing well early in the game.
Cy, your thoughts on Coleman?
Jonah Coleman, a lot twitchier than I thought. I did watch his tape coming into this year, and it did seem like he was a little sluggish with some of his lateral movement. That was not the case early in this game. I mean, he gets his feet off the ground, and I'll tell you what, he can get drafted for his pass protection alone. I mean, this is a complete back. He's very physical, 5'9", 228. We're skiing it right now with Kim Scadaboo. That build, it translates to the next level. These guys are just hard to get to the ground. They're hard to square up, and he brings that mentality that you need with that build as well.
So, obviously, the next game we're going to touch on here, guys, LSU, Ole Miss. Obviously, a big topic of discussion in the Giants locker room this week, I'm sure, between Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors, two guys that obviously from rival programs that played each other in college. And obviously, terrible what happened to Malik Neighbors this week. It's awful. It just sucks. But Ole Miss, I ran to Jackson Dart in the cafeteria this morning. I asked him, "Hey, Jackson, I know you're getting ready for the game. You have a chance to watch any of Ole Miss LSU?" I got this big smile. He goes, "Yeah, I did." So Jackson Dart had a pretty good week. Ole Miss beating LSU 24-19 in that game. But Tony, you want to start out with the LSU quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, who I know some people have as a number one quarterback. I'm not sure he's played to that so far this year. I'm a fan of his too. What'd you think of Nuss in this game?
I think all the red flags about Nussmeier you saw on Saturday. He doesn't have the great arm. He doesn't have the great physical skills. Sometimes he's off the mark. He has receivers adjusting to errant throws or leaving their feet. He throws the ball into double or triple coverage at times, as you saw consistently on Saturday. I mean, there was one instance where early in the third quarter where it looked like LSU was going to get back in the game. They intercept the pass. They bring it down to Ole Miss's 31-yard line. Nussmeier couldn't convert. So, there's a lot of love out there for Nussmeier outside the scouting community and in the Twitter draft world. I just think that all the red flags on Nussmeier we saw on Saturday, and it's a major concern. He tries to throw himself out of trouble at times, but he doesn't have the arm strength to throw himself out of trouble. And that's going to be, I think, the talking point as Cy said, talked about how people get involved in the draft in January. When all the talking heads get involved, does Nussmeier have the arm strength? Does he have the physical skills to be a starter, to be an early pick in the first round come April?
I mean, I'm a huge Nussmeier fan heading into the year. I did think that if he came out last season, he could have been QB1. That was my projection of him at this time last year at the end of the 2024 season. But even he's been terrible this year in relation to that projection. He's not been that guy. In my scouting notes coming into the season, I said, hey, you got to get rid of the "what are you doing" moments. Like these head scratching moves, these, eye-opening bad decisions. And that's exactly what happened at Ole Miss. I mean, Kelly comes to the sideline and Kelly looks at him and goes, "What are you doing?" with an extra expletive in there. And for a fifth-year senior, coach's son that knows the game like the back of his hand, these are red flags because the mind game is where he can make up for the lack of tools. He's not big, he's not fast, his arm is average. But at the end of the day, he's 6-4 against the SEC with 20 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. And I mean, I circle back to the interception in the third quarter. They're up by 10. It's 3rd and 27 against Florida. And he throws the ball as he's running out of bounds into the middle of the field, and it ends up getting picked off. Now, I saw Cam Ward make that same exact throw against Duke last year, similar situation. But sometimes these guys, they need to understand game situation decisions. We know he's smart. We know he knows the game. He grew up around it. But when you're in the heat of the moment, you have to take what the defense gives you and stop trying to force the ball into windows that your arm cannot handle.
Tony and Cy. Tony, you go first, and Cy, you can build on it. Who else from this game jumped out at you?
Well, Daquan Wright of Mississippi. I mean, he's 6'3", he's 245, 250 pounds. He runs in the 4.6s. He's a terrific athlete at the tight end position. 4 receptions for 66 yards. I wish they would use him more in that Mississippi offense, although Lane Kiffin seems adverse at times to using the tight end. But this is a guy who has all the physical skills to play on Sunday. He needs to polish his game. I don't know that he's going to get that opportunity at Mississippi in this offense. And I think what's going to happen is, as we get closer to the draft, people are going to start to talk about his tools, start to talk about his traits. When the ball is thrown to him, the tape is pretty good, but the opportunities just have not been there. He was good last year. He's shown the ability. He's shown some improvement this year. He's more of a move tight end, not a bad blocker. They don't ask him to block that much. It's not his forte. They get him out into space, have him move around, use him as a receiver at the tight end position. This guy's got a lot of upside, and it's what teams really are looking for these days in the NFL at that position.
Incredibly soft hands, 6'4", 255. And like you said, that offense is not set up to give him the opportunities on tape to project to the NFL. I mean, he hasn't had a contested target yet this year. But when he does get the ball in his hand, he is dangerous. You're not going to find many 250-pound tight ends that can move like him. I mean, we're just a few weeks into the season, He's got catches of 26, 38, 53, and 64 yards already. I mean,
Wow.
the 13 point yards after catch per reception is second in the nation, wide receiver and tight end, with guys over 10 catches. That list is 375 players deep. He's second in the country. Behind Branch from Georgia in terms of what he's doing after the catch. Those big chunk plays have kind of weighed that a little bit, but he's also sixth in the country in that group at 23.3 yards per catch. As a tight end, that's not 220 pounds. This guy's a legitimate tight end. And I watched a lot of his blocking tape, and he's not a difference maker there, but he stays on his man, he moves his feet, and he tries hard. I mean, that's where you just want to start. So that program, they think he's going to be a first round pick. I'm not there, but he is definitely qualified to be labeled a starting caliber prospect, which to me is day two.
I think you put him on a team like Missouri that uses the tight ends, even Miami. It's probably a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the other guy from Mississippi that I liked is this linebacker, Sonarine Perkins. He's an edge defender in their scheme, but it's funny, same last name reminds me of Harold Perkins, just not big enough to play on the outside at the next level. But all he does is produce. I mean, he's been a rock solid player. He was all over the field. He plays fast. He plays stronger than his size suggests. I think we're looking at 6'3", 230. A really highly touted recruit. Alabama wanted him. LSU, Georgia, Oregon, all those teams were going hard after him. He was third team all SEC last year, 14 and a half tackles for loss. He gets, like Harold Perkins, he finishes when he gets near the action. He gets behind, he can slither through blocks. He's great at locating the football, and he finishes. And I think there's a spot for him somewhere at the next level as a day two, maybe early day three prospect.
Yeah, and Ole Miss wins that game 24-19. And by the way, he's not going to get drafted, but give the Ole Miss quarterback some credit. Division II transfer, Ferris State, right, if I remember correctly. Trinidad Chambliss, 23 of 39, 314 yards and a touchdown against a LSU defense, specifically a secondary, that has a lot of players in it. So I just want to tip my cap to that guy. He did a really nice job, Tony.
Absolutely did. And there are some people in the league that actually like him. I mean, I was talking to somebody on Friday. They said, and he's small, he's an RPO type quarterback, and these shorter quarterbacks have not worked out. But there are some people in the league that actually like him. I found that out last week, Thursday and Friday, talking to people. They said, watch out for this guy because he's pretty good.
Interesting. All right, let's go to the next game, Alabama and Georgia. Alabama wins that game 24-21. A action-packed first half. Not a lot going on in the second half of that game. Tony, you want to lead off with Caden Proctor, someone that we've talked about a lot here. In your notes, I'm a little disappointed in you. I'm not going to lie. You mentioned great job picking up stunts and twists. No mention of the one run for 11 yards when he's running over like four dudes on the sideline, man. Come on.
Yeah, well, there were three games on that night, so I'm going back and forth between three games. I do remember that play that you talked about. But here's the thing is, when we spoke about Caden Proctor at the beginning of the year, I said I think he's a college left tackle who projects to the right side. After watching him against Georgia, although the Georgia defense is not what it's been, I'm not so sure. Maybe this guy can play left tackle on Sunday. He's bigger than I would prefer in the left tackle. He's got great mass, but I love his fundamentals. Thought he did a terrific job in pass protection. Really, nobody got by him. Stout, holds the point of attack, controls his man. You mentioned the ability to block in motion, picking up the stunts and twists. I liked Proctor coming into the season, coming into the game. He just further impressed me with his performance against Georgia.
Si, what do you think about Proctor? Do you think he's a top 10 level pick?
If he catapults from this performance against Georgia, I mean, look at what he has coming up on his schedule. Missouri, 2 NFL DNs on that team. Tennessee, who has an ascending edge defender in Josephs that I think we're all going to be talking about as a first-round prospect. South Carolina, who has a top 10 kid in next year's group. LSU, then Oklahoma. I mean, that's 5 of the next 6 games. He's going to be facing off real NFL pass rushers. And if he can use this performance and apply it to those games, there's no question in my mind he's OT1 in this class. I did not have him as OT1 coming into the year. I'm a Spencer Fano guy from Utah, but you can't argue against 6'7", 360 with that kind of movement trait. And I'll tell you what, the Evan Neal comparisons are inevitably going to come up, whether you think they're fair or not. And Evan Neal got a lot of attention for the Bruce Feldman freak list, one of my favorite reads of the year. But at the end of the day, that list does not translate to the NFL that well because that's more structured, controlled workouts and jumping on boxes without pads on that we get a little too excited about in summer when there's no football. Proctor, he's a better football athlete. He stays square. He stays on his feet a little bit better. There are some top heaviness clips to his tape, but if Proctor plays at this level over the next 4 to 5 weeks, sign, seal, deliver OT1 next April.
Yeah, it is funny you mentioned the Neal stuff because you're right. And the one thing I regret when I did my evaluation of him, he never did any of the athletic testing at the combine or anything like that. He didn't do any of the drills, but he was on the freaks list, right? So you're like, well, you don't worry about him as an athlete. And now you've seen some of that stuff kind of pop up, and you're like, oh, that's why he didn't want to do offensive line drills at the combine. Now I understand. So
yeah, it's kind of funny because when we have Bruce Feldman on, I've asked him if he thinks that sometimes guys that are on his freaks list prevent them from working out before the draft. Who was the defensive tackle that the Cowboys took out of Michigan in the first round?
Ozzie Smith. Yep.
He turned down to a bust. And if you remember, he was one of the, I think he was the top of Bruce's list one year. And I said, Bruce, do you think that these guys see what you write about them and they don't work out before the draft because they're not going to hit these numbers? And it's going to be a disappointment. It's going to be written about, Bruce Feldman said he was supposed to run a 6.89 in the 3-cone, and he ran a 7.1. Wow, he's not doing well. So it's an interesting dynamic there as far as I'm concerned.
No, it is. It is. And, the expectations with those workouts are always huge. Tony, a couple defensive players you want to touch on in this game, too. One for Georgia, one for Alabama.
I like LT Overton. He had that big play late in the game. He's quick. He's explosive. As we talked about LT Overton in Alabama, where is he going to play at the next level? 6'2", 6'3", 270 pounds. Is he a defensive end? Do they use him as a 3-technique tackle? He's a good defensive lineman who makes plays. And I don't know that Georgia's going to have a first-round pick this year as they've had so many previous years. But if there's one player that could sneak into the first round, I think it's going to be C.J. Allen, the linebacker. An off-the-ball linebacker who can blitz when asked, but he's usually used in space. I know it's a bit depreciated now in the NFL draft, but he's explosive. He goes sideline to sideline, covers a lot of area on the field, just really starting to hit his stride as he moves into the starting lineup on a full-time basis.
How about you, Cy?
Jeremy Bernard, the wide receiver from Alabama, and I try to avoid making myself put a pro comparison on it. I let them come to me, and if it's there, it's there. If it's not, I don't make one up. Chris Godwin's name comes to name every single time I watch this kid play football. Again, didn't have a massive game, did have a touchdown, but the ability to be a big slot, I think that's going to be his future at the next role because he's not the most explosive downfield route runner on the outside, but his route running, his savviness, he's got a 2% drop rate. I mean, the guy does not put the ball on the ground, and he's actually showing a little bit more juice after the catch than I thought he had using prior year tape. And Isaiah Horton, a second-year transfer, I believe, from Miami. He had a big game from Alabama, and that guy he's the one that I think could be a real vertical threat, more of a day three type prospect. But this wide receiver group overall, the general draft class it's very unstable at the top. The draft class itself is very unstable, but I'm not sure what to make of the wide receivers yet. But I'll tell you what, Jeremy Bernard, you can just pencil him in for a top 45 pick next year because I think he's that safe, reliable, big physical, 6'1", 210, catches everything, makes some things happen after the catch. I liked his game, and I liked what he's done so far this season.
Yeah, and it's funny. We talked about that last week, Cy, where at this time last year, you probably knew 4 or 5 guys that were definitely going to be top 10 picks. This year, maybe you're a 2, maybe something like that. So there just are not a ton of guys that are going to go in the top 10. I want to ask you about one player in this game, both of you guys. Jam Miller got his first action of running back this year for Alabama. Tony, we haven't talked about him at all. It's a pretty good running back class. What are your thoughts on him?
Didn't have great numbers, but I think he settled that Alabama offense down. I think with Simpson, the quarterback there, actually was able to take another step or really improve his game after a couple of tough weeks because Miller's there. He's a tough interior runner. He shows some ability to bounce it to the outside. He's strong. He also has the ability to create and make defenders miss. It wasn't a great stats game, but I think just him being on the field for the first time this season really helped settle that Alabama offense. Looking forward to seeing what he can do moving forward. I have him as a potential late day 2 pick. We'll see what happens.
How about you, Cy? Your thoughts on Miller?
Just glad that he's back early in the year because I want to
Yeah.
see as close as we can to a full season's worth of tape. He's your classic Alabama running back, the ones that we just see every other year on average. Thick lower body, can take a lot of contact, stays square to the line, protects the ball at a high level, caught 3 passes, his only 3 targets of the day. Also, a nasty special teamer. Early in his career, I think he was second or first on the team in special teams tackles, and that's a really fast route to kind of breaking a tie in the pre-draft process. Is like, hey, I'm more than just a backup running back. I don't project him as a starter. I'm thinking more of a early day 3 type. But again, these Alabama running back, it's very rare that an Alabama running back with some status behind him does not at least, give you a solid number 2 or number 3 role at the NFL.
All right, let's go to the game of the week, guys. Oregon and Penn State. And Tony, we want to start with Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq. We talked about him with Dane last week. Dane told us last week he was his number 1 tight end in the draft. He did not disappoint in this game. 6 catches, 49 yards. Now in the season, 15 catches, 204 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
And a terrific blocker. I mean, he did the job as a blocker as well. I think if he's tight end number 1, it's because it's the tight end class is probably worse than the receiver class. He could be there. I don't think he's there yet. I think he has that potential to maybe develop into a top 45, maybe top 32 pick. You see the athleticism. You see the well-rounded game. That Oregon offense is in a bit of a transition after Dylan Gabriel moved on last year. You got to like what you saw. Came back even after hurting his ankle late in the game. Was a major factor. Love his upside. Just don't know that he's there yet.
Yeah, I'm very high on Sadiq to the point where I'm kind of putting my eggs in this basket. Little late to the party. He's from I think Idaho Falls, Idaho. You don't see a lot of prospects come from there. He ran 11:04 100 meter. He was a 205-pound wide receiver recruit. Incredibly violent, active, physical kid. They almost put him on the defensive side of the ball in high school. Thank God they didn't because that just goes to show how physical it is. And we saw this last year when I was watching his tape over the summer. He put Abdul Carter through the floor in their late season matchup, and he let him know about it. And you just know he's got that switch in his head. He's a physical dude. Right now, among the draftable tight ends that I have in our stack, he is either the best or second best blocker. And I mean that, all draftable tight ends. And then I think he has a Brock Bowers type potential after the catch. And that's what made him special. That's what made him a high first-round pick. And I think Sadiq is a better athlete. I think he's a better blocker. The play of the game by Kenyon Sadiq had nothing to do with offense. Over time, Dennis Sutton makes the interception. He's about to break free for a score. Sadiq comes out of nowhere. He makes the tackle. He forces the fumble. He scoops it up. And then he makes the second, Penn State scoops it up, and then he makes a second tackle right after. It's at the end of the game. It's something that you might not have watched because you're so into the game. But the guy is a classic blue-collar football player, elite athlete, number 11 on the Bruce Feldman freak list, by the way. I mean, he just checks every single box. I'd like it to see him produce a little bit more as a downfield pass-catching threat. But I'm telling you this right now, our lads, the way we make our initial top 32 stack, which comes out in a week or two, I believe, it's not one guy, it's not two guys, it's our team. We kind of come up with an equation to make it so it's not just one person. I'm going to put him in my top 10.
Whoa, top 10. I like it.
Yep.
Like it. Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Football Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, and now let's go to the offensive side of the ball here, Tony. We'll stick with Oregon first. Isaiah World, their offensive tackle. I know you're a big fan of his.
Transfer from Nevada. I thought he did a good job holding up at left tackle. I mean, did a solid job against Dennis Danny Sutton, who, at times you wish he would just shut up and play football rather than all the histrionics out on the field. But I mean, World, he looks athletic. He moved well. This was a major test for him, at least the first major test. I think he sets with a bit of a narrow base at times. Would like to see him spread his feet a little bit further apart and stick his butt. But I thought, you saw a lot of the athleticism. You saw a lot of the pass blocking skills. You saw why Oregon went out and signed him to a big NIL deal. to clamp down that left tackle position after losing their left tackle in the first round last year. I thought it was a good showing for World. He's got long arms, uses them well, needs to polish his game. But you consider that moment, you consider that game playing at Penn State and what that game meant. I thought he came out looking really good.
First true test for him this season, and it was his best tape of the season. I actually didn't love what I saw early in the year. I watched a lot of his tape from Nevada. He started 35 games there over the past 3 seasons prior to that transfer. And obviously he looked at there. I think he could count on one hand how many times he faced off against a future NFL defender. And what he did on this Penn State, I mean, unbelievably explosive and violent. The pop that he played with, I didn't see that early in the year. And it seemed like he really rose to the occasion. He took that environment head on. And it's not just Dennis Sutton. They have a freshman pass rusher that we're all going to be talking about in a couple of years. He dominated him. I mean, he was getting a lot of push in the run game. I mean, we're programmed when we watch tackles to watch their pass sets and their footwork and their balance. He was a difference maker in the run game. And that's where Oregon, in my opinion, that's where they won the game. They were able to really move the ball on the ground, and they ran behind him a lot, and he was getting 2-3 yards of movement nonstop. So that was a really important game tape for him, one that we're going to be talking about in the pre-draft process. And the grade for him on that one was without a doubt an A.
All right, Tony, let's go to Drew Aller. It's someone we've talked about now for a couple of years. And again, just the potential, the size, the traits, it hasn't shown up in production. He does have that one nice deep pass in that game for a touchdown to help bring Penn State back. But overall, just 14 of 25, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns, that 1 pick. And there were some other things in this game that you did not like from what you saw from Aller.
Yeah, it was almost a Carson Beck type performance. Carson Beck at Miami, he didn't kill the team, but he really didn't hurt the team and couldn't push the ball into the end zone. He keeps you thinking that there's so much more that he can deliver. And there was one point after Oregon scored that second touchdown in overtime, the camera panned to Drew Aller on the sidelines. And Aller looked like, I got to go out there again. It was almost like he was hoping that the Penn State defense would win the game for him. He goes out there, he throws the pick in overtime, game over. The body language was just horrible. He didn't seem chomping at the bit. Let's get out there. Let's kick their butts. Let's get the ball in the end zone. Let's get the 2-point score and win this game. He almost looked like he didn't want to go out there like the defense. He wanted the defense to win the game for him. You look at that game-tying drive. He was 1 of 5. That one completion was the 7-yard touchdown pass. But it seemed that last drive and even that first drive in overtime, Penn State took the ball out of his hands and said, we're just going to run the ball. And if we want Drew Aller to do something, we're going to have him run the ball rather than throw the ball, which showed me just a complete lack of confidence in him. Which, I mean, this is 3 years running now. I mean, he was phenomenal as a freshman, a la Christian Hackenberg. We thought he was all going to be the next coming. And it's been nothing but, the same Drew Aller, if not in reverse the past couple of years. It was not a good performance. It was not the performance that he needed. It was not the performance that Penn State needed.
Same page with him, Tony. He's played 7 games over his career against top 10 teams. He's 1-6. His completion percentage is barely above 50%. He's got 11 touchdowns. And I believe that one win was against Boise State. This is a guy, this is a program, this is a head coach that when they face their toughest tests, when they really need to rise to the occasion, it almost never comes through. And like you said, it's almost like it's scared football. And that's the vibe I get when I watch him. I don't know if he completely knows what he's seeing or he completely trusts himself. There's a lot of heavy, clunky movement with his footwork. He misses layups and then he makes a 3-pointer. That's kind of been his career, where you just don't know if he's the kind of guy that you can trust drive to drive, week to week. It'd be one thing if he would 10 starts under his belt, but he's going to enter the NFL with probably 40 starts to his name. And we have not seen progress. I mean, when we look at quarterbacks, you don't have to be a finished product in college. We know that. But we do want to see progress. We want to see improvement. Both him and Garrett Nussmeier, we haven't seen that this year. And in a quarterback class that there are some guys knocking on the door that are playing better than both Aller and Nussmeier, their draft status, their draft grade can disappear pretty quickly.
All right, Tony, one more guy in this game you wanted to talk about, Amari Washington.
Yeah, we talked about the coming of age of some of these Ohio State defensive linemen, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Donald. Caden McDonald. I think you can say the same thing for Amari Washington of Oregon, who basically was a situational guy, came in off the bench last year. You're starting to see him hit his stride. Very explosive, tremendous first step off the snap. I mean, he just has the opposing offensive lineman playing back on their heels. Oregon thinks he's going to be a first round pick. I'm going to take a wait and see approach, let him get a body of work going before I'm going to stamp him as a first rounder. Would like to see him play with better pad levels, tends to get a little bit high as the play goes on. But yeah, he looks like he can be a difference maker up front. You got to like what you see, and you got to expect that it's only going to get better as he gets more and more playing time.
Cy, you could touch on him, or you could anyone else in this game that jumped out at you.
I'm going to try to say the name one more time. I thought I was done saying this one, but Mateo Uiagalelei, the defensive end. I'm just going to call him Mateo, or I'll call him DJ's brother. But I'll tell you what, man. I mean, I had a top 15 kind of projection on him if he made progress, like we said, in the season, and that progress has been made. I mean, 6'5", 275. He plays like his hair's on fire. 17 pressures so far this season, but also an elite run defender. And it stems from a couple of different things. He's learning how to use his length in his hands, but the effort is just out of control. I mean, he is just all over the place. And I think when you look at this edge group in particular, very strong group, you have a lot of guys that are playing like this where, hey, if they don't reach that high ceiling upside as a pass rusher, their floor as a run defender is so high that at the very least, you're going to get some usage out of him. I think this guy lived in the Penn State backfield. He knows he's making progress year to year. And you do a little bit of background check on him and just who he is as a person, he's going to work his butt off. Really interesting backstory if you guys want to read up on it. But I think the turns and the timing and just the angles that he's taking towards the quarterback, it's what I wanted to see last year when I was watching his tape. And we're still early in the year. He's a very young kid. I think that's a kid that we're going to be talking about as a first rounder next spring.
That's all the time we have for draft season, presented by Moody's, is a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risks into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll see you next time.